Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Well, oh, geez, sorry, did we interrupt you there, Chewy?
No, I apologise. Just went straight in my eye as soon as you started talking. Ow.
What was it? Was it a bug? We don't have bugs
in
Dunedin.
Let's say a bug. Who knows?
One of the things
I'm still here.
One of the things about Dunedin that I love compared to Auckland is you leave a little bit of honey out on the bench in Auckland and there's a million ants the next day. I haven't seen an ant in Dunedin. It means that we can more easily be slobs. I think that's what a real southern man means. It's just they're slobby enough not to be as clean as you have to be in parts of the country that have ants. That's all it really means.
I would just say that Auckland is too humid, moist and dirty, full of bugs. Horrible, dreadful place.
I have a public service announcement. Don't get a tattoo unless you're determined you're absolutely going to keep it forever. So people could probably see on my finger, my ring finger, there's a tattoo there. It cost me $100 to get put on. I'm at $1,000 after today's appointment to have it about half taken off. And spoke to the people, the lovely people who obviously say at the start of a treatment, we can't guarantee it's going to be done, but we suspect this number of visits will probably take care of it. We're at that number of visits now. We're about halfway there. And I said to them, guys, I need to do something more urgently about this. So they doubled the laser today, Joey. They doubled.
Double lasers.
So they went, what it is, they don't double the actual power of the laser, but it goes from being an 8 mil surface to a 4 mil. So it's double the intensity into that area. Holy shit. But I said to them very clearly, I think I would rather have the excruciating pain on my finger than the excruciating pain in my bank balance, because I can't do another $1,000. This is over the space of 2 or 3 years, because it's like every 2.5 months you go in, to remove what was a wedding ring. So it's just my public service announcement. Don't get, I've got other tattoos, but don't get a tattoo that you may have to remove one day, because it's A, effing expensive, and B, well, actually, fingers, I was told today the finger's particularly painful because there's no meat there. If you get it done in your arm, or like if it's closer to bone, it hurts more. So anywho, that's my public service announcement for today, Chewy. There you go.
That's good. I think I've got a solution. It's certainly much cheaper. You might not need as many
fingers. Cut one of them.
No, I was going to say as many sessions.
Right.
And you can get it locally.
Right.
We could try that. We just take it off.
To be honest, it would probably hurt less.
Like ripping the Band-Aid.
Now, last night
you can have
a
sausage on the way out.
Last night on the show, I did say that no one had purchased a T-shirt during that time period. I really want to apologize because my emails were scrolled down, and Sarah Sutherland actually made a purchase last night while we were on here, and I didn't give her the correct kind of acknowledgement, and I also didn't give her this.
Thank you very much for your kind donation. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your kind donation. Thank you very much.
We're doing when people decide to purchase a piece of merchandise whilst we're live. I always want to say on the wireless, whatever you call it, on the interweb. So speaking of, just so people know, if you haven't joined us before, we do have a merch drop going on at the moment. How it works is you get to purchase your merch between now and the 20th of July, then all of this merch goes away. That's it. It's a 2-week period, and then it's gone forever. And when I say gone forever, what I mean is these colors and these logos and these symbols. So if people particularly like if the left vote, the left wins one, that might come back, but it won't be in black or white or the sky blue. So this is the only time to get those colors. And if you want to get them, then you need to get it now. BHN Shop .nz. We've sold a handful. It's been good. Thank you for the people who have jumped on board and bought some. A way that you can financially support the show, but also a way that you can wear on your clothing a political statement or ideology that you might adhere to. And also, just to wrap all this whole thing of thank you to you guys up, I want to say thanks to a couple of new patrons. Dave Finnegan joined, actually at the end of last week, Dave Finnegan joined. So we're giving you some credit now. And literally, as I was sitting down here about a half an hour ago, Henry Adams signed up. Henry Adams is a coffee runner over here, and Dave Finnegan is a patron just here. I don't know why I call the level patron because they're all patrons, but that's the patron level for the patrons. I don't know. So Dave, thank you for signing up, and Henry, thank you for signing up. We appreciate you both. We would normally have been doing a catch up, a get together this week, or this weekend. But I have to say that I am back in Auckland this weekend, wrapping up some stuff with my dad. So going to do some. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Chewy. Going to do some stuff with Dad's apartment and wrapping it all up and cleaning it all out. And so, yes, that takes priority. Unfortunately, it takes priority. So maybe next weekend we'll do a get together, a catch up, if you will, on the internet for all of our patrons. And yes, there are people. Actually, you're welcome. Maybe we'll do it closer to the 20th. But there are people who are suggesting, various hoodies and stuff. A large BHN logo hoodie. So I guess what you're saying, Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just like BHN across the chest. And you're not the first person to just ask for that. So maybe that'll be one of the ones for next month. A couple of people have asked for them, and we'll get into that. We can do that. We'll have to get the sizing and what the size of the print would be, but we can absolutely look at doing that for maybe next month. We're going to try and do a drop once a month. It's going to be for a couple of weeks. And it's going to be different every single month, either the slogans and the logos. The thing about doing a BHN one, though, this is the thing, Chewy, it can never come back. So if we're going to do that, it can never come. There has to be the deal with the drops because they have to be exclusive. You know, if you're like a bit of an OG for BHN, and look, I was going to say our views are going up. It's not going up compared to a lot of places in the world, but compared to where we started, our views are significantly increasing. That still means if you're with us today, you're a bit of an OG, bit of an early adapter. You know, you don't want some blooming poncy yuppie to come on in 3 years' time and get the same privilege you got today. So just so we're aware, and obviously you can see our branding around us up over there above Chewy's head, the BHN on black. That's kind of the official colouring. So if we do a black hoodie with a red logo, that's never coming back. That's it. So, doesn't that works? All right. Bunch of stuff going on tonight, Chewy. I'm really keen to get into this conversation around gangs and what to do with gangs. We've had a conversation here with the recently departed Chester Burrows, who was a National Party minister who tried to ban gang patches. And as many conservatives seem to do, whether it's in America or New Zealand, once they leave the political scene, they see the light and they realise all that stuff they were talking about was utter horse shit. And so Chester Burrows, we actually interviewed him. He's in our podcast history. If you want to go look him up, talking about how banning gang patches never works, has never worked, didn't work. They found that out, and so they didn't chase it. Well, of course, as Chewy's been saying over the last couple of weeks, it seems that National likes to look over their shoulder to try and find stuff that had been done before that didn't work before, but that seems to be their policy book for 2023. So we're going to have a look at that
what
tonight.
Their objective is.
Yep.
Depends on what they mean by did it work. Did it solve the problem? No. Did it get us votes? Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. This is the thing as well. We'll get into it. I'm going to do something else first. We'll get into it. But the idea that when the experts are telling you one thing and you're saying, I know better, what you're doing is speaking to your base, not to the issue. Because if you actually wanted to solve, like put it this way, Chewy, and I know there'll be some people potentially watching who will disagree with me, but in the world of medicine, if you wanted to be protected by, have a better chance at getting through, say, COVID, Would you listen to your GP, the doctors, the experts, the Anna Brookses of this world, or would you listen to Liz Gunn? You know, Liz Gunn says that I've got different information, but who's more reputable? Yes, we can always find information that says something else, but if you want to solve a problem, then you listen to the experts, the recognized experts. If you want to speak to your base or have a good talking point or try and shit on the other position, you just take the opposing view and you basically say, I know better. Yeah. And that's really all that's come out. In fact, we'll get into it in more detail shortly. We're going to talk about something else to do with the National Party first. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's more of an opening question and a bit of a conversation starter, because National has said one of their policies is they're going to open and build, I don't know if it'll be physically build, maybe it will be fund a new medical school. Government questions the costs and the value of National's medical school policy. The government is questioning National's ability to fund a new medical school and said it's unclear if doing so would increase the total number of doctors trained. But National says the school, based at Waikato University, would offer a faster, more modern approach to doctor training. Of course, no details on how that's going to work, but they just say it would. Because there's obviously a med school here in Otago and Dunedin, but maybe because it's in Waikato, it's in a warmer climate, maybe they walk around the campus more quickly and it'll be faster. I'm not sure they've given us any details as to how it will be faster, but there you go. Party leader Christopher Luxon announced the policy, which also included 50 more placements to the two current medical schools at Otago and Auckland, a university, on Wednesday morning. The party included costings of $380 million in capital for setting up the school, which would start training graduates from 2027. Some $100 million would be provided by the university, and Waikato Vice Chancellor Neil Quigley, it's the mayor from The Simpsons, isn't it? That's Quimby.
No, that's Quimby. So close.
So close. Quigley was confident in being able to raise the funds. Labour's Health Minister Aisha Verrall said it was true more doctors were needed, but had questions about the plan. The biggest issue here is that the National Party is simultaneously promising tax cuts and this expensive investment, which we agree is needed, but they need to show how they're able to pay for it. So we've had criticisms of National in the last few weeks about they haven't known their costings. We all know about that. How much does it cost to keep a prisoner? 100,000. It's actually nearly 200,000. So they can't have done their costings. And this one, they've given us a number, but some are asking, how are you going to pay? If that number's accurate, fine. But how are you going to pay for it simultaneously whilst giving the top 1% massive tax cuts? In other words, you're going to take your tax take down. How are you now going to pay for that? That's the question they're asking. She also said there were concerns about whether setting up a new school would really increase the total number of medical students trained in New Zealand. Cabinet had previously advised that going down this path of medical school at Waikato would lead to a reduction in the number of placements available for other medical schools. So that's a really interesting point, Chewie. So, and I don't mean this in a kind of snarky way, but will you have a lesser quality of student being able to become doctors because there are more placements? Or are there enough people in New Zealand, are there enough students that fill up the current quota and another 100 more so we could do it? I don't know if that's what Aisha Verrall is actually saying, or maybe that's just my question. I'll read you one little last bit and then we can have a crack. Certainly, she goes on to say, we want to grow the number of medical students we're training, but we need to make sure we're not just committing the funds, but we're also making sure the opportunities for those medical students to have all the training they need, the facilities they need, and the placements in hospitals they need are there. They will have to identify places, teachers, working doctors, and others at our hospitals who are willing to supervise the students, make sure they have fulfilling experiences where they actually learn things and are not just bystanders in a busy hospital. Auckland and Otago universities had opposed a similar plan for a third medical school at Waikato taken up by the national government from 2016. Labour cancelled the proposal 2 years later. Now, I guess if we're fair, we've got to also say there's a bit of a vested interest as to why those universities may oppose it. So let's take that with a grain of salt. Auckland University Dean of Medical and Health Science, Warwick Bagg, said there was no need for another medical school, telling RNZ for the most cost-effective approach would be boosting student numbers at the current ones. So, Chewie, I guess it's not one to really either rip apart or support because there's lots of unknowns. But the idea of more doctors, everyone seems to be saying is good. Is this one of the policies from National, which we actually, give them a tick for that one? Or is this grandstanding? Is this politicking? Could the money be better spent elsewhere? I'm not sure.
I mean, I'll freely admit here, I don't know whether we need to scale up training more doctors. Like, I don't think we've had. I don't think we've had really a public outcry of like, there's not enough doctors, we can't get enough, and so it's an odd policy. But again, I would think if you've got existing medical schools, it's a better idea to scale those up to be able to train more, especially if they're high performing. If they're well regarded.
Yeah, let me add this in about this. Not to interrupt you, sorry, bro. But Dunedin Dunedin's getting a new hospital, and the current hospital is going to be a part of the university. So there's certainly going to be capacity in Dunedin to have a whole heap more medical students, because there's going to be a whole bunch of new buildings at some stage that could therefore host.
Didn't they just say for the Dunedin Hospital they're scrapping the training building that they were going to put in?
I'm just thinking of the physical space, because the current hospital, my understanding, we could look this up, is going to be, and I'm not saying because it's a hospital it's going to be used to train medical students, but there's going to be more capacity to host more students in Dunedin, and that could flow on into hosting more medical students. I'm not making a connection between the old hospital being used for medical students, but just students in general. So I guess that's another way to, like that $380 million, if that was split in half and given to Auckland and Otago, would that be a better use of the money to get the same number, if not more, new medical students, or is it better to get a brand new one? Again, I don't know the answer to that, but
yeah, I honestly don't know. I'm I hate this phrase. I'm happy to give National the benefit of the doubt here, that it sounds like a good idea to be able to train more doctors. My concern is, does spinning up a whole nother facility have enough benefits to it? Like that return on investment they love to talk about?
Yeah.
I mean, in my mind, there is this whole thing of like, it's taken so long to get Dunedin Hospital built. They seem to be taking modules off more often than they're confirming that it's actually going ahead. I would like to see more of a commitment from National to say, hey, look, we have an issue with training doctors, and one of the solutions for that is to absolutely guarantee the funding for that particular unit on the Dunedin Hospital.
Yeah.
That's me being very parochial there. And hey, look, maybe having another training facility in the Waikato makes it more accessible to more people to be able to train as a doctor. People that can't afford to pick up sticks and go down to Otago or travel up to Auckland or something like that. I would like to see more incentives to retain the doctors that we train as
just
well.
The idea about getting to places, though, I mean, really, it's an hour apart. Hamilton and Auckland's an hour apart. If you can get to Hamilton, you can get to Auckland and vice versa. So could this be like, if we're thinking about competition, and you don't really think about it in the educational sector, but let's be honest, Otago's laying off a whole bunch of staff, and the government's just had to farm out a whole bunch of money to various universities because of since COVID, the uptake of students hasn't been quite so much. But so let's have a look at that. Something in Waikato would probably be more impacting to a current Auckland medical school than it would be to Otago. It's unlikely you're going to go, I live in Napier and I can't get to Auckland, but I will go to Hamilton. If you're already going to Otago, if you're already keen to go to Otago and do it, that's I mean, like I've said for a long time, I didn't study in Otago. I didn't really come to Otago until I was 40. And I look at the lifestyle of the students down here and I go, why wouldn't I have? This is such a missed opportunity. Like, yes, there are lots of bad things that you hear in the press about the students in Otago, but I tell you what, looking at it as a, someone who was in his 40s when I moved here, it's a real experience. If I'd have known then, if I could have seen then what I know now, I would have been to Otago in a heartbeat. It's a whole lifestyle. It's a whole, I mean, like, not to go on about Dunedin now, but for people who don't know the area, the students' accommodation goes up to the boundary of the university. You can roll out of your bed at 8:30 in the morning and grab your coffee on the way and be there by 8:45. You know, and that everyone lives together, and it's not entirely that black and white because people also live elsewhere, but it is a real lifestyle that I think is unique in New Zealand.
I mean, I guess my gut feeling is this sounds like National promising a big project pre-election. You know, a big, like, we're going to fund this and it's a new thing and it's going to be us. It's still an old idea that they tried and they cancelled. And I just think that if you had that sort of funding and you've costed it out, is there a better place to put that money? Dunedin Hospital, Dunedin Hospital, Dunedin Hospital.
Yeah. As Cheryl says, you guys need that hospital.
We do. We needed it 20 years ago. Like the capacity, the major hospital capacity in the South Island is way under where it should be. Like, if you've got people in Invercargill that can't get into Dunedin Hospital because of capacity, or they don't have the specialists, you've got to go out to Christchurch. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. Our hospital was built in the 60s and 70s. It's well past its use by date. And so many successive governments have kicked it down the road. And one of the things that I gave Labor massive props for was, we're going to build it. And now, since then, it's been like, we're going to build it, but we can't afford this bit because the price has gone up. It's like you're building something that's going to be effective for 50 years, say.
Yeah,
just spend the fucking money.
Yeah, and it's so disappointing as well, as being someone who would see a benefit from that hospital. I imagine building a house, which I've never done, but you're going to build it, and this is the plan at the start, and then you get halfway through and you realize, actually, we better cut back here, here, and here, and then you get halfway through that, but you have to cut back here, here, and the house becomes a shadow of its former self. And I'm like, if you cost it out over, you said 50 years, it could even be 100 years. To be honest, an extra 10 or 15 or $20 million here or there is negligible when you think about the longevity of a hospital servicing, tens of thousands of people a month. And I know, look, Auckland's probably servicing hundreds of thousands, but then again, you guys have got in Auckland multiple hospitals. Waikato's, I was going to say Wakatane. That's actually wrong. Waitakere's got a hospital. North Shore's got a hospital. Auckland Central's got a hospital.
And it makes sense for the population, right?
Yeah, totally. Totes.
But it's population and geography.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few comments in the chat. I think I'm going to highlight this one. Henry's one. Like, this is probably a good example of what I'm talking about. Of like, is this the most cost-effective use of this funding that they apparently have? Why not increase the fees-free policy from 1 to 3 to 7 years for doctors, nurses, and teachers? Make training facilities a core business of the universities. Is that a better tactical use of that money to attract more doctors in and to get them trained, and the nurses?
Let me ask you a question. I'm doing some numbers on the fly here. So here's a question, right? How do you feel, Chewy, if we said to the country, you and me are running the country now, okay? We're in charge, right? So you've got your wish, Chewy. I'll be the VP. You can be the benevolent dictator.
Right, shit's going to change. Strap in.
If every single person in the country increased their tax, the amount of tax they're paying by literally 1 cent in the dollar. That's it. 1 cent in the dollar, every single person. We all agree that there needs to be more money driven into education, healthcare, doctors, nurses. If we all agreed, and I just did this, I don't know why I picked $20,000. I'm thinking someone on a pension or something. So $20,000, right? Divide that by divide that by 52. 20, divided by 52. I mean, that's, Jesus, what am I doing? 20,000 divided by 52. So that's only $384 a week. So would someone on $384 a week be prepared to give up $3.84 to have a better health? And I'm asking that because we always talk about the guys at the bottom being the worst off. And that obviously therefore means someone on 200,000, 200, boom, 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 divided by 52 equals times 0.01 equals, gives up $38. Like I'm saying, if everyone in the country gave up 1 cent in the dollar more to fix our health and our education, do you think we'd all sign up for that? Put it this way, I would. Do you think we all would? Because it would be everyone in the same boat. It would impact those who had more would pay more. Just remember, this is an idea literally off the top of my head. I've got no thought into this, but I'm just thinking about a way that we can increase the tax take to fix up all these things that we're always complaining about. You know, if you've got a leaky house, or if your house is not insulated, or your house is not working well enough for you, if I gave you $1 million to fix your house would be sorted out, right? So now scale that up to if you've got a broken health system, if I give you $100 million or $1 billion, whatever that would be, would that fix it? It would certainly probably make it better. Do you think that's something we could sell? One cent in the dollar, every single person in the country, fix our education, fix our healthcare.
Yes. Yes. Like I mean, we've got ourselves in this position through decades of neoliberal tinkering.
Yeah.
Low taxation and privatization, and we'll run the government lean, and that'll provide the money. And as we look around, I'm seeing crumbling hospitals, roads, underpaid teachers, nurses, doctors, emergency services, military, the whole lot. The experiment isn't working. It's not. Lots of people are stacking up cash. Well, actually, not a lot of people. Some people are stacking up a lot of cash.
Yeah.
And there's this, whenever it's talked about, hey, look, maybe we need to have a look at tax. Maybe we need to redo the thresholds. Maybe we need to look at, does everyone pay a similar effective tax rate? We've got those answers now. And the answer is no. And then whenever someone talks about, well, maybe we should look at getting some more money out of the people that are more able to pay, then suddenly we're scared about scaring away the job creators. They're not job creators. They're dragons. They're hoarding properties and they're selling properties and they're gaining tax-free money. They are not job creators. And if they were to go somewhere else, chances are they're going to go to a country that has already solved this problem. That they have capital gains tax, or they have a wealth tax, or something like that. So it's all bullshit. Let's have nice, new, shiny hospitals. Let's have happy nurses that want to stay in this country.
Yeah.
You know, people that will go through the university training, give back to the country that trained them, and stay here and build a family, and all of that sort of stuff. The short-term thinking is, I think, our biggest weakness. We don't aim for growth.
You guys are talking in the chat about bonding. So that used to be what happened with teachers, and I'm sure other places, but I went through teacher training college, so I know the teachers, and I think it was 4 years. So a way you could do that in today's current climate is, rather than making it as black and white as bonding for 7 years, what you do is you basically, whatever the fees would be, $12,000 a year, so it's $100,000 for a doctor, right? You do the 7 years, but you just take it off. So in other words, if they stay for 5 years, they've taken $60,000 off, they still owe 40, and they can buy themselves out. Like, should they want to go offshore, they can pay the $40,000 back.
That's fair.
Yeah, or something like that. The other thing I always thought is 15, maybe more years ago, I wrote a piece about service to the country. It sounds very, you'll like this because it sounds very kind of militaristic, sounds very drafty. But I always had this idea that what we could do is we could offer students out of school, like a gap year, of serving the country. They could join any one of the service industries that the government supports. It could be the Army, the Navy, it could be the Coast Guard. Maybe it could even be something in the medical frame, like, you know, pushing trolleys around hospitals and stuff. And what you do for that is you give them their salary as a credit to their education. So you do a 1 year service to the country and you get a 4-year degree in return for it. Now, the thing I used to say is the guarantee you'd have with that is if they did decide to join the Navy or the Army or whatever, they would never see conflict. So should there ever be something that comes off, they would never be sent offshore. So you're not going to have them ending up in some foreign country having to, you know, build wells or something. So it was a service to the country, for the country. And, you know, you probably gave them a stipend of a few $100 a week, but then you literally banked their salary that they would have had, and that goes on their education, and that then becomes free education for a year.
I mean, there are programs like that around the world. I know Finland has a compulsory service thing, and it used to be compulsory military service because their neighbor is a very large country that has a somewhat lax attitude to borders. So they wanted a lot of people in the military, but they're also a Scandinavian country that doesn't really necessarily jive with the military man. So they opened it up to just service. You could be helping out in an old folks home or a school or that sort of thing, but it was a compulsory that here is a set amount of time that we want you to do that. But I mean, we keep mentioning this idea of bonding, and everybody sort of goes, man, that sounds like a great idea. And then we do nothing about it. Nobody wants to do it. Yeah. I think the way that you framed it there is perfect because saying bonding someone, you can't go anywhere. But yeah, if you go, hey, look, we provided you X amount of training and university learning and that sort of thing, and New Zealand would like a return on its investment, and so here is your receipt, and the longer you stay, the quicker it goes down. And hey, look, if you want to go, we just want our money back.
Yeah, and you could actually
right?
You could actually tie into it like for those 7 years, they could also 10% of what they earn could go back into the government coffers as well, like it's a student loan. But I guess what I'm thinking, and remember for folks who are listening to us or watching us right now, this is just a spitballing green light thinking. We haven't been through this, but let's say that they had $100,000 worth of debt, and over those 7 years they only paid $60,000 back in their 10% extra. That's still clear. It's a contribution back, but you don't have to necessarily pay all of it back because it's about the service back to the country. You could do that if you want to.
You can even tweak that, right? So we have a problem with not enough GPs in rural areas. Cool. Well, if you want to go and be a doctor in Gore or Alexandra or somewhere that's really struggling to get staff, well, guess what? You pay out at double the rate or something like that. But the chances are these people are going to do this, meet someone, settle down. It's good. It's good. It's a good thing. Why can't someone do this? This is the sort of populist policy that I want, rather than some of the populist policies we're going to talk about in a bit.
Yeah, well, Carl also says that what I just suggested is a variation of TOP's teal card policy. It looks really interesting, to be honest. And look, I actually really like TOP. However, they're not going to get my vote. Like, I like them. I've done a podcast with the leader there, Raj, name eludes me. Because they've overtly said if they get in, they're sitting across bench. So if they're not going to support the party that I want to be in politics, then I'm not voting for them. And that actually is the same for any party. We haven't actually had a declaration from the Māori Party yet. Māori Party are an option for me, without question. Party vote. I'm not in the Māori role, but I can do party vote Māori. But until they kind of say yes, they will support, they can't have my vote. It's just how it is. I'm not going to vote for someone who might end up allowing the part of politics I don't want to run the country to run the country. Sitting in opposition or sitting across the benches could leave enough space for a national act government, and I'm incapable of doing that. So they do not get my vote. So I've got nothing. I actually liked a lot of what they had to say, but just because of that, they just can't. I'm sorry. For me personally, I'm not giving anyone any education or telling you what to do, but for me, can't do it. Sorry, can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, DIY Guru here, it costs more to lock up a gang member for a year than it costs per year to train a doctor. Maybe we could solve those two issues at the same time.
Gang doctors.
Train the mongrel mob up to be doctors.
I did think about that when I saw that conversation. This is going to sound a bit silly. We are tangenting beyond a tangent now. That if it's $193,000 a year to keep a criminal, a prisoner in prison, surely if you paid that person that money, they'd have no reason to commit any crimes.
Oh,
if you paid that person,
Parliament with that, sir.
I know this is a silly thing to say.
Punish people.
But if you paid them, let's say $150,000, I don't even know how this would work. This is a real green light thinking. You're $43,000 a year better off. So act all like that. And if you're paying someone 150 grand, they've got no reason to steal or rob or anything. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. Some people commit crimes because there's crimes of passion, there's mental health issues, that kind of stuff as well. But if everyone was a millionaire and the economy wasn't, beyond inflation like Zimbabwe, what would be the need to steal? Naive, I know, but I'm just, big picture.
This is the argument, right? And you're seeing national talk about it, right? How the prison population has come way down under Labor, and that means Labor soft on crime, right? Because less prisoners in the prison, soft on crime. What that says to me is that we're making better use of our correctional money, because locking people up has no return on investment. It keeps someone off the streets for a bit. It's the short-term hit, which national love, but it doesn't solve the problem. You get a more hardened criminal, a more broken person back for that 200 grand a year. If you came to anyone and says, I can solve this problem for $200,000 per year, this is the solution. We lock them in a box. You get laughed out of the building. It's fucking ridiculous. Show me a cheaper option that has a better result. And that's what Labor's been doing. It's not perfect. It doesn't fit that thirst for people want a punishment. But it works.
Rob Burney, I don't know if this is an appropriate comment to put up or not, but he just made a comment about crime. He says, some of us enjoy crime. Why? I was in Dunedin the other day pushing furniture onto the elderly.
Well, there's always, look, sometimes you have to reevaluate the rant that you've just made. And Rob Burney, straight to jail.
Look, I'm aware that my idea is silly, because obviously the downstream idea is, well, therefore I will go out and become a criminal when I'm 18, so the government will pay me $150,000 a year not to be a criminal. Yeah, so I get it, but I'm just like, how could that money, that $193,000 a year, be used better to help that person not commit the crimes? And that's the start of. And I know lots of people have said UBI, but the problem with UBI is, I think when we talk about it, we're talking about like $1,000 a month. That's not going to do it. That's not going to be the kind of the thing to stop people, because that's $12,000 a year. That's not going to be what stops people from, wanting a bit more. And look, people are always going to want a bit more. I'm not naive. Millionaires commit crimes, but surely that $193,000 a year to keep someone in a cell could be used better to keep someone in society. Let's be a bit actish, paying tax or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's a silly flip comment, but the meat of it is true and worthy of discussion. Is 200 grand per person a good way to spend public money? I would say no. Maybe we need to point that, like, we need to get people out of prison, and we need to point that money that we would have spent on the offender and the staff and the facilities to keep them locked up, and we point that at their fucking kids.
Yeah.
We point that at the schools in their communities.
Yeah.
And we break that cycle, the cycle that we started in the 50s, 60s, and 70s by locking kids up and breaking them and making them feel like they're outside of society and outside of a community. So they go and form their own community, and they start wearing a uniform. So they make sure that they feel like they're part of something. And then when the greater society turns around and spits on them, they go, well, you know what? We're going to put swastikas on our face.
It
Fuck
feels like
you guys. I don't need to stick with your rules.
It feels like it's completely.
That's what got us here. There are so many books about this. There's so many studies. There's so many experts. And whenever someone brings it up, it's like, oh, yeah, but the gang members, they've made choices. Damaged people make bad choices. That's what the fuck it is.
It's completely the right time to jump into the conversation around gangs, but I'm actually going to But I'm actually going to pause something because there was one other story I was going to talk about, but I'm going to literally spend 2 minutes on it, and then we're going to get into the conversation around gangs. Because if we don't, we'll go to 11:30, and then we'll be, I still won't have done it. Like me and Chewy got on before the show tonight going, I don't know, we've got lots to cover on tonight, and we've had basically, we've basically had a casual chat for the first 40 fucking minutes. So let's just look at this super quick, because I'm just really reporting this back to people. Arise Church reports almost $2.8 million loss after scandal. We don't even need to go too heavily into this, but the thing that surprised me most of all is that Arise Church had the capacity to lose $2.8 million. In other words, they had so much of an income that they could actually lose $2.8 million after reporting a $3 million profit.
How does the church make a profit, mate?
Profit. In 2021, Arise posted a $2.77 million loss last year. Donations fell by about a third, from $14.9 million, so from $15 million to $10 million. So they're receiving $10 million in donations to make a $2.77 million loss. Now that means they have about a $13 million operating budget. Just think about that for a second. While event revenue all but disappeared. Event revenue, obviously people didn't want to be associated with them after the scandal. Event revenue went down 99.6% from $642,000 to $2,500. So the first part about this, which is super quick, and we're not going to debate this tonight, Chewy. I'll give you the floor in a second and you can wrap it up. But I'm just dumbfounded that they have so much money that goes into that church. In any of those churches, I guess we should be thinking about City Impact Church and Destiny if we want to see some real numbers. But this is the other thing. After the scandal that went on about abuse and about, misogynistic, the horrible stuff that was going on, physical violence, everything, they reported the falling attendance in the churches around the country as well as stream services. The average number of people at a physical Sunday services fell from 4,000 to 3,100. So 3,100 people have gone, no, well, that's all right. Now, because I grew up in the Catholic Church, I know a little bit about, the scriptural stuff that comes behind that. And there's a thing about foundation. It's quite a big thing of the Christian faith about, because I grew up in the Catholic Church, the Catholics think that Peter, the Apostle Peter, was the first pope, because Jesus said, on this rock, they called him Peter the Rock, on this rock I will build my church. So that talks about the foundation of the church, right? Foundations are really important. The foundation of this place is lies, cheating, violence, abuse. And in that foundation, 3/4 of the people stayed. Numbers fell across the church's programs for children, down 28%, and young people down 62%. Young people have got a bit more of the picture. So 6 out of 10 young people, that'll be teenagers through to their early 20s, have left. But young people, that'll be families, only 3 out of 10 have been pulled out. Arise has ramped out some of its outreach activities, spending 1,751 hours in high schools, up from 642 hours, and serving. Now this one, I will credit where credit's due, always do. 88,000 hot breakfast to children in low decile schools, up from 81,000. So, good on you. Churches still do the right thing sometimes, but shocked with the amount of money going through that place, shocked that they have the capacity to lose the best part of $3 million, and shocked that 3/4 of the people that were going are still going, a little bit of physical violence, spare the rod, not such a big deal. I'm not saying anything else, Chewy, or we'll stay here forever, but you can say what you want now.
All I want to see is the only fucking profit and loss statement I want to see from a church is, we took in this much money from our congregation and we spent exactly the same amount of money on charitable stuff. And then they show that to the IRD and the IRD goes, all right, carry on. The moment that Arise turns around and says, well, actually we made $3 million worth of profit, then the IRD should climb up all inside them and go, well, if you're not going to do some charity, we fucking are.
I don't have a problem with church members paying like a tithe to their church, which is a donation. If you go to a golf club, you pay subs to pay the greenskeeper, to keep the lights on, look after the fairways, to pay the petrol on the lawnmowers. Don't have a problem with churches taking offerings or donations from their congregation to pay staff and to do that kind of stuff. But but just so we're clear, you're right, Joey. $3 million profit in the ledger. I mean, someone's already mentioned in the chat, it's already whipped past about how can we have a profit in the church, but because they're not by definition, a charity is not for profit. But I guess what they're probably saying is it's $3 million left over, which you then hope gets driven into charitable goods. But it's probably been, we sure as fuck know that the person that they asked to do the report on them, they didn't use it to pay her properly. She had to get David Farrier to come and sort that out for her. And think about that. Cost her whatever it was, $40,000 or $50,000 to sort that out, and they had $3 million profit from the year before. Anywho, let's talk about something a little bit more friendly than Arise Church. Gangs. We'll talk about that in a sec, though, because firstly, I just want to tell you something in a way that you can get involved with our little show. Today's episode is brought to you by BHNshop.nz. Yep, that's right. Big Hairy News has merch that enables you to both support what we do and allows you to voice your political opinions via the international medium of clothing. Head to bhnshop.nz for this month's drop of either If the Left Vote, the Left Wins, or Christopher Luxon, not a businessman, just a board member, with free delivery in New Zealand. This month's drop ends July 20th, so be quick and head to bhnshop.nz to make your order and support what we're doing to fight mis- and disinformation this election cycle. That's bhnshop.nz. I'm almost to a point of being a little bit embarrassed by that stupid thing I did in there, but anyway, we're done. No. All right, we're going to keep trucking. Let's have a look at the story from tonight. There's actually quite a bit to share here because we have an interview with Luxon on RNZ as well. But let's go to the news story from News Hub tonight.
Criminal gangs are here to stay, according to a report by the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor.
That's unless politicians can put aside their tough-on-crime rhetoric and agree to change their approach. But as political reporter Lloyd Burr explains, there wasn't much of that today.
Dennis O'Reilly's been in and around gangs most of his life.
Expert, right? This is an expert. Might not look like an expert because he's not wearing a tie, but in this instance, expert.
He's a life member of Black Power.
I'm no saint by any means, and I took part in a fair bit of that gang life.
He's a community advocate now, even has a master's in social practice, but keeps an eye on what's happening in the gang world.
They are just a fact of life, and it's the least bad outcome that is going to be the best we can do.
He was one of the contributors to this report, ordered by former Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern into gang harm. It concludes there are no quick fixes to gang harm. We can't arrest our way out of the gang problem. Political rhetoric like tough on crime and soft on crime isn't helpful, and a zero-tolerance approach by police won't work.
There are no short-term solutions, but that there is real hope in changing the type of landscape we have at the moment.
People talk about being tough on crime. I actually think the current Commissioner is being smart on crime, and what I hear the former dog handler proposing is, in my view, dumb on crime.
That former dog handler is Mark Mitchell, seen here in 1996. He's now National's police spokesperson. His party wants to ban gangs meeting in public and wearing patches too.
Gangs are not nice people. They want all the rights of being Kiwis, but they're not prepared to take the responsibilities of being Kiwis. They peddle in misery and cause suffering to many families up and down this country of ours.
The report recommends a stronger focus on prevention and early intervention, expanded violence reduction and addiction services, more prison rehabilitation programs, and a health approach instead of a solely law and order approach.
We're not going to be able to incarcerate our way out of this. That to truly have those long-term effects.
That's a great slogan. We're not going to be able to incarcerate our way out of this.
We're going to have to look far more holistically.
This holistic approach is more or less supported by Police Minister Ginny Anderson, who wasn't available for comment today. As for the opposition,
we're going to work on those long-term challenges and that social deprivation that often is a driver and leads into a life of crime. We're going to continue to do that work. Long-term, consistent, hard work.
The true fix is better education, better housing market, better job market, so people have better prospects than being a mob prospect.
And regarding the report's plea to dial back on the rhetoric.
Tough on crime and tough on gangs, and tough on the causes of crime, tough on gangs and tough on crime.
Expect more of that rhetoric over the coming months with an election to win.
Right, story number one. Now, I actually have a whole bunch to show, including probably best part of 6-minute conversation with Christopher Luxon on RNZ. But your initial thoughts, Chewy. Let's have at it, sir.
I hate when David Seymour says something that actually makes sense. He's right. It worries me how he'll get there, but he is right. This is from National just populist bullshit. They know it gets them votes. They don't know how to do it. They know it. They must know it. It doesn't work because they've tried it. They've tried it so many times. The one time the National Party did anything positive with gangs, it was Rob fucking Muldoon, who gave them all jobs. Like, you can't punish these guys out of a lifestyle because they don't care. They don't care about what society thinks about them. That's the whole reason that they're in a fucking gang, because people treat them shit already.
Yeah.
So wearing a patch, having a swastika on your face, and being an absolute bastard doesn't matter. We don't care about them. Put them aside. The adults in the gang, they're not the target. Their kids are. We have to break the cycle. We need to fund the people that work in their communities, that can talk to their partners, that can make sure their kids have better options. That's how you stop gangs. We had a really good opportunity to defund gangs. We did a referendum about it and we fucked it up.
Yeah, totally.
And National could have taken a big hit out of the gangs' incomes if they just pulled their heads out of their asses.
Well,
and
hang on.
did it.
Not just take a big hit out of the gang's incomes, also, I think it was $500 million a year of tax take as well. So not just take a big hit out, but also add a big chunk into our coffers for all these things we're worried about when it comes to, education and the health system.
It makes me laugh that National talk about the hard work and the long term. They don't think in those terms. They're a populist party. They talk in terms of sugar hit policies, sugar hit programs, stuff that sounds good that'll get them votes that they'll never follow through on because they don't work and they know it and they don't care.
Yep. And we're going to now have a look, because the thing about the report that's come out, making it really clear, is it actually says using terminology like being tough on crime could actually do the opposite of what National is trying to do. So the senior science advisors and the scientific community are saying this doesn't work, this is going to be harmful, which is why at the start of the show, what I said was, when you get told by the experts that this is the worst way to do this, and you continue to do it, then what you're doing is you're speaking to your base, you're not trying to solve the issue. Now let's just think about that for a second. If National let's just say that the gangs are out of control in New Zealand and everyone's running for their lives. That would be brilliant to get National elected. If the gang problem was solved, if the gang issues weren't there, that would be bad for National. So they are actually potentially going to get from being able to stir up the conversation around how dangerous the gangs are. Now, for many people out there who support National, when they would see a connection between various medications we've had over the last 3 years and how pharmaceuticals were pushing them, you'd say, well, hang on, there's a connection between those two things, so your point's not valid. Well, there's a connection between the National Party and seeing the gangs out of control, which actually helps National. So why is it any different? Because if they can paint the picture, be it accurate or not, that the gangs are out of control, that helps them get elected. If there is a picture on how to solve the problem, that doesn't play as well to their base.
It actually links back to what we were talking about earlier, a week ago now. You can't trust hunters to control pests. And it's exactly the same thing. It is in the hunter's best interest to make going hunting easier. And that's the same. If National wanted to solve the gang problem, then what would they talk about? It's their easiest target.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look, shall we? Because there was a conversation this morning on RNZ with Christopher Luxon, where he was challenged quite a lot about how what he was saying. I'll use our terminology rather than RNZ's terminology. I think the technical term was horse shit. And he didn't have a lot to say in other than basically saying, I don't accept those scientific findings, I know best. And he cited some other international situations, which I've got the information for on one of them, and we'll show you what it's all about.
Oh, yes.
We'll show you what it's all about. RNZ this morning, talking to Christopher Luxon.
We're joined now by National Party leader Christopher Luxon. Kia ora, good morning.
Good morning.
This report, a science-based, evidence-based report looking at the evidence out there, would suggest a number of the policies you are proposing, such as banning gang patches, etc., do not work and, in fact, may make things worse.
Well, I think what's obvious is what the government's been doing over the last 6 years is not working. We've had a 66% increase in gang members. We've got a 33% increase in violent crime. We've got 75% growth in...
Now, to his credit, I think it's Corin Dan who's hosting this, does hold his feet to the fire a little bit. But we just always got to remember this. Mr. Luxon, science says your policy won't work. The response is, well, Labour. Well, Labour.
We've spoken about this in the past when he says that there's been a massive increase in gang members and that sort of thing. It's a relatively new thing of trying to work out how many gang members there are.
Yep.
So again, he's not providing context to his numbers.
Yep. It's that idea of the number of left-handed people went through the roof once they stopped beating children for being left-handed. It's like, the number of gang members gone up, or have they started identifying them in a different way to make it look like there's been an increase? It could be either, but Luxon wants to make sure he knows that we sell it that there's been a big increase. We'll keep going.
Gang members from kids aged 18 to 25. Gangs are not nice people. They peddle in misery. They cause huge pain and suffering up and down this country. So
well, some of those figures are disputed. But putting that aside, coming back to the question of
he could have ducked out on that one, and he didn't.
Well, the chief science advisor argues it's difficult to measure gangs properly. But I want to put that aside because I want to come back to the key question, which is. They have looked at the evidence both here and overseas, the evidence. So they've just gone out and had a look, and the evidence shows gang laws targeting gangs are ineffective and, in fact, may make it worse. And that is what you were proposing.
I think if you talk about what the Labor government has done in Western Australia, if you look at what's happening in Queensland, these rules, a legislative approach and a focus on gangs and tackling gangs has actually worked incredibly well.
So are you suggesting that the evidence you have is more rigorous and comprehensive than that of the Chief Science Advisor?
Well, I'm being really clear. Clearly what this government's been doing for the last 6 years has not worked at all. New Zealand is less safe under this government than it was when they started.
Again, that may well be true, and people will dispute that, and that may well be true, and that's fair enough to make that argument. But what I'm arguing about is the policies you've identified, aggravating factors for gangs, gang patches, banning gangs in public spaces, and the Chief Science Advisor saying the evidence says, well, actually, those policies will probably make it worse. They'll create a situation where more people will join gangs.
Yeah, disagree completely. We are in a place of crisis. You don't have a 33% increase in violent crime, a 66% increase in gangs. And the reality is gangs are not good. They peddle in misery.
The one thing that I'm getting frustrated with is why has there been, in your opinion, a 33% increase in violent crime? Like, I've never heard Christopher Luxon answer that. Like, why has there been? What's the sociological, what's the financial, what's the economic, what's the societal issues that have caused that to happen? Because just saying it, be it true or not, and we've talked about the reporting of crime and how it's skewing things a bit, but be it true or not, actually understanding why it's happened is the way to solving it, not just vomiting out the number over and over and over again. And I don't know, I'm in the process of approaching all the leaders. Will Christopher Luxon come on with us? I would think probably not. We're probably not big enough, and we'd probably, if they've ever watched anything we've done, won't want to put him in the situation. But I would like to ask him these questions. Why is that? If you're watching, Chris, why? Why has it gone up by 33%? What's the answer? Because even if it is a valid answer that you can lay at the feet of Labour, why has it gone up? How do we solve that problem? Not just, it's gone up, we're going to chuck them in prison. It's gone up, we're going to ban gang patches. You know what I mean? That I need more from a would-be government. But let's be honest, we need more from an effective opposition as well. a well-functioning democracy needs a really good opposition. We currently don't have one. That's why they're not smashing Labour in the polls.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's my frustration. I'll never vote for National, but I can appreciate when they call out something that Labour is doing wrong or could do better. That's how we get a better country. That when they talk about holding people to account, that's what they should be doing. Instead, we get dog whistling. Instead, we get barking at cars. Instead, we get, oh, well, I've found this stat that sounds really good, but I'm going to just vomit it out with absolutely no context. And I'm going to absolutely run out this line that has been focus tested in the last week, that gangs are not nice people. They peddle misery up and down the country. We've played 2 clips. I've heard that 3 times now.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's who he's calling on, as John T is saying in the
Take
text.
the wheel.
Let's get going.
And suffering. They want all the rights of being a New Zealander. They're not prepared to take the responsibilities. And so I make no apologies for being tough on gangs. We're going to ban those gang patches. We're going to give the police dispersal powers, criminal activity break-up powers, warrantless search powers. And we will make it an aggravating factor.
It doesn't work.
I'm not sure there are that many people out there saying gangs are good. But I guess that parallel to your proposals, what are the initiatives which this report says are necessary, the early interventions, the dealing with the intergenerational elements of this, people born into gang life? Give me some examples of some policies that National will implement, as well as your tough on crime stuff, that will actually address the root causes.
What we've said is also when you're actually in prison, and remembering this government's only target in this crime space has been a reduction in the prison population, is actually to make sure that all prisoners, whether they're remand or sentence prisoners, have access to every rehabilitation program that we've got. That's what we've got to do. We've got to be able to rehabilitate gang members, criminals when they're in prison. Equally, we're going to work really hard on the causes of crime, and a lot of that's around our social investment strategy that we've talked about before. But it's not an excuse for saying you don't
talk
also
about
be tough on crime and tough on gangs. You need to do both. You need to have stick and carrot. It can't just all be carrot. Clearly, the government's had evidence. If they believe so strongly in their approach, why have we got such poor outcomes in crime? So, I make no excuses. We are going to tackle gangs. You cannot have a town like Opotiki shut down because gangs came to town. You cannot have fights happening in Palmerston North and mums and kids cowering in coffee shops.
Just finally on this, do you not accept that this is an evidence-based study? This is an attempt to take the heat out of a politicised issue. We know this is a politicised issue.
It's not a politicised issue. We're being really clear about the causes of crime. We have a problem in New Zealand around crime.
Actually, I would challenge that. We're being really clear about the causes of crime. I actually don't. Unless I've missed it, I haven't heard anything. I have heard no causation. All I've heard is committing crimes going up. I actually haven't heard anything about the causes of crime. Like, I'll be honest, I might have missed it, but I haven't heard anything about the causes of crime. Right? Because that's actually what we want to do. We want to figure out what are the causes, because then we can address it. If I've got a leak in my house, I want to find out where the leak is before I can fix it. I just keep talking about the leak. It's like, where is the leak? Why is it leaking? How do I fix it? And now I can fix it. That's what we want to do.
You just ban rain. That's how you fix it.
No, you put rain in prison. That would be a bucket. You just put all the rain into a bucket, and then everything will be okay.
I mean, he talks about it can't all be carrot. He never talks about carrot.
Yeah, that's true.
It's always stick.
Yeah.
Like, there's all of this talk about prison. And treating people on remand or they haven't even been convicted. Like they're all drug abusers. It's just retarded. But then we get a little snippet that we're going to talk about societal investment. I'm not going to tell you anything about that. We're going to talk about how Labour loves the gangs. The gangs. They think they're good guys.
We're going to get into that. Let's got about 2 minutes to go, because there's a whole bunch of accusations put out shortly about how Labour gives money to the mongrel mob to do drug rehab, yada yada yada. I've got the information on that. We'll get to it shortly, but let's finish this diarrhea train that we've got going on at the moment.
One of the contributing factors is gangs, and so we're being really straight up about it and saying we're going to tackle the problems that we've got in this country, and we're going to have pragmatic, practical solutions.
It's a politicised issue. Mr. Luxon, because
not
you
for us. It's
you
not
accused
politicized.
the Labor government of being soft on crime when in
They are
fact
soft on crime.
they are arresting hundreds of gang members. They're doing all sorts of
crime is going up, Corin, and the outcome that most
But
New
to
Zealanders
suggest
are
that in
worried
any
about
way,
Did you notice that goalpost shift? Corin Dan just said they're arresting hundreds of them, and he didn't address that. He went, and crime's going up. It's like, hang on. But because I did this as a tweet, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. You can go to my Twitter feed if you want to see it, people. That we had a report a few weeks ago about the number of that Labor has introduced some kind of new legislation around fighting organised crime, criminal elements, gangs, and there'd been hundreds, if not thousands, I think, of arrests. And I put out a tweet and it said, how many would National need to see before they actually said, okay, now you're no longer soft on crime? Like, what number would National need to see? Remember, we did this with Michael Woodhouse, I'm going to say, when we talked about inflation. And he was like, well, we'd probably be around 5.5%. And that's where we're at 7.2. So actually, when they were complaining about inflation, by their own acknowledgement, they were complaining about 1.7% of inflation, which actually 5.5 was impossible. Nowhere in the world was that. But, they had to say something, because if they had said 7.2 is not that bad, then that wouldn't have been good for the base. National or Labor policy at the moment is causing hundreds and hundreds of gang members to get arrested. So what number does National need to see before they finally go, yep, that's enough? All of them? Double the number getting arrested? What is that number? Let's finish out, eh?
the police are somehow operating in a different way than they were over the last 10 years is politicising it.
this government's operating in a very different way. It sent a message from the very top that they're soft on crime. It's not surprising. They've given $2.7 million to the mongrel mob for drug rehabilitation services. That's insane. That's insane. They're the people that create the drug.
It's also not true.
In the first place. There's much better rehabilitation providers than the mongrel mob. They give $9,000 to gang members to complete census forms. You've now got Labor MPs meeting with Harry Tam. Harry Tam's endorsing the coalition of chaos. He's the new coalition partner for the Labor government. So, I mean, the point is really.
Well, we should note that that was
there
was an accidental meeting. We'll put that one. To the side. Yeah, I'm just curious as to, because you've dismissed this report from a chief science advisor who's looked at all the evidence. You're quite happy to quote from the chief science advisor when it backs your genetic modification policy.
Yeah, and I've also looked at the evidence in Western Australia under Mark McGowan, a Labor Premier over there, who's done an exceptionally good job of cracking down on gangs. I've looked at the evidence in Queensland as well as we've developed our policies. And so, I make no apologies. Yes, we're going to work on the continued causes of crime. That's important, and the approach we'll use will be social.
We're going to continue to work on it, but we're not going to explain any part of that to you now. But we are going to continue to work on it.
Investment around that. But we also need to say, look, I'm sorry, but you just cannot run amok as a gang member, causing mayhem and misery across the country.
A couple of quick questions about Oranga.
Right, we're going to leave it there. And before we do, I found that tweet. Let me bring it across. So we've got all that information. So this is the tweet I was talking about that I sent out. Operation Cobalt has affected 40,000 gang-related charges. Over 100 a day. That's over 100 charges a day in 12 months. More than 8,000 individuals have been arrested. National says Labor soft on crime. I wonder how many charges they would need to see to recant that talking about. Would it be 50,000, 100,000? How many? Because it's over 100 a day. So how many would National... I mean, remember, Luxon is incredibly concerned, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be concerned about this, New Zealand, but about, 3 ram raids every 2 days. Well, they're currently making over 100 charges every single day against gang crime. Why do they not get the credit for that? It's like, what number do you need to see to not be soft, quote unquote, soft on crime? Chewy.
I would also like to point out the fact that although there are a lot of things that criminal gangs have in common, you can't look at a gang in Australia and what works at combating that and bring it over to New Zealand, because they are fundamentally different. Their cultures are different. The reasons, their history is different. The engagement is different. The communities are different. This is classic National of like, we can't possibly solve this problem in-house. We have to look at X country overseas. Yeah. And it's just, they take the policy and they bring it over here, and they miss all the context of why it was successful. They had local experts looking at their local problem and solving them locally. We're apparently too small and stupid to do that.
Yeah, it's
we
what
don't
we've-
listen to people like Harry Tam, who has the lived experience of being in a gang and knowing how to get through to these people.
Speaking of Harry Tam, I've started investigations to see if I can get him on. Apparently, he's a very private person. He won't talk to media very much at all, but I'm going to try and get him on. And just in saying this is a side note, sorry. We talked last night about trying to get Shamabel Jacob on tonight. Just so you know, I approached him. He's on holiday with his kids at school holidays. That didn't happen, but I'm still investigating getting another economist on maybe tomorrow night. Back to what we're talking about. It is so funny when a would-be government, when a politician would say, look what they're doing in Western Australia. When it comes to things like capital gains tax or wealth tax, they won't go, look at what they're doing in Western Australia or whatever part of the word they're pulling that from. It's a bit like what Corin actually said about you're happy to use the chief science advisor on your stuff and then ignore him on the stuff that doesn't suit your narrative. I don't feel like you can do that. It's an all or nothing. Two things that have come out of this. The first is giving the mongrel mob $2.7 million to do drug rehab. Well, let's have a look at the facts and figures behind that. Is Labor funding the mongrel mob? What you need to know. This is a story from 2021. The money from the proceeds of crime was signed off by those at the top of Labor, including then Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. It was for a methamphetamine rehabilitation program called Kahukura in the Central Hawke's Bay, but the organisation running the program has gang connections. Some of the property it is held on has gang connections, and some of those taking part do too. However, the organisation has its aim in its name, hard to reach. It's trying to help Māori and marginalised communities and help them rebuild. And those applying for that $2.75 million had to jump through a lot of hoops before it was approved. Later in the story, it talks about the program. This is from the then Prime Minister talking to Morning Report. It's a marae-based program that, yes, the participants are gang-affiliated participants who have been involved in meth-related crime and activity, who have this meth addiction. The program is designed to try and reduce down criminal activity and meth addiction. Little side note. Do you let's just say they're all crims, all these people involved in this rehab situation. Do you think a crim on meth would be better for society or a crim off meth? Like, I'm just wondering, even if we give them all the credit that they are all gang related, they all crims are all, they're doing it, which would be better for a functioning society? I mean, I know it's maybe a bit of a Sophie's choice, but I think a crim off meth would be better. That's not what is happening, but in general. So, are there gang members involved? This is the same story. Ardern said there are individuals who have had gang-related backgrounds are involved in running the program. That is true. But also it is designed to try and address drug use within gang membership as well. So it is not unexpected that those with a background would be involved in the program. Now, notice the difference. Luxon says they gave $2.7 million, I think, to the mongrel mob, is what he said. What the program is having people who are gang affiliated, who used to be in gangs, who are still working in and around, I guess, gangs, running the programs that they need to run to speak to people in the gangs. It's a marae-based program that is residential, and the question and the choice we have is we either accept that we want drug rehabilitation programs to involve those who have criminal backgrounds or we exclude them. My view is if they are involved in crime and victimisation, I want to address meth addictions with those groups. They are perpetrating a problem. If we choose not to do that, then I don't see how we solve the problem. The organisation involved in running the program, Hard to Reach, is run by co-director Harry Tam, a former mongrel mob member. So there's part one, right? Luxon says they're giving $2.7 million to the mongrel mob. It would appear from that report that there are a bunch of people who are either gang affiliated or former gang members who are doing the mahi to get into the gangs to try help them, which will in turn help society with meth addiction. Who else are they going to do it? Are they going to get their local national MP in there doing that? Do you reckon he's going to be welcomed onto the marae to be the person to do it?
No, well, so you're missing an important point here, Pat. And I'm not surprised because you're a rabid lefty woke commie cuck. Famously, once you're a gang member, you have no value. There is no
Right.
redemption.
I forgot.
You can't possibly turn your life around. So don't bother. Just straight to jail. That's the only way. And if you're a former gang member that's maybe looked back and gone, shit, this hasn't been a great life for me, and I want people to, I want to be an example how it's not the only option. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Don't look into it. Please don't look into it.
Okay,
but it just doesn't work. Straight to jail.
Yeah. $193,000 straight to jail.
Yeah, straight to jail.
$193,000 to put someone in a marae-based live-in facility. Forget marae-based. Other ones, live-in facility. I wonder what would be more effective to get that person off the drugs and to being a valued member of society again.
Well, so often, like I mean, the whole marae-based thing, right? So many people use that. Oh, it's almost a weasel word. Oh, it's marae-based, so it's not effective. And we come back to another problem that we have here: the European supremacy, the Western supremacy. It must be a European-based, a white-based solution. It's got to be. We can't possibly factor in cultural affiliation.
Yeah,
we can't possibly talk to them in their own language. We can't possibly use, similar backgrounds, similar experiences to get a message through, because that's just giving money to Maori gangs.
Yeah.
And it's always there. Whenever they talk about this program, it's always there. Harry Tabb is in the mongrel mob. That's it. And we're giving money to gang members. And they made reference to the local MP here, Ingrid Leary, meeting with mongrel mob people. And that's a negative. It's not. If you shut people out of society, either by locking them up or telling them that they have no value, there's no point in you voting because we don't give a shit about what matters to you, then you have people outside of society. If you're outside of society, why would they give a single fuck what you think?
Yeah.
It's so dumb.
Yeah. Well, I've done, and especially from groups that are talking about the outcomes that we want, the outcomes that we need to get. If they're using the policies and they're putting in practice things that aren't going to get those outcomes, then it's not just dumb. It's obvious pandering to a base that they want the votes from. Because if you're actually if your objective is to get the right outcome, then you should be doing the best way to get that outcome, the best policies, the best practices. And if you're being told these aren't the best ways that you power through anyway, then it's obviously it's not about the outcomes. It's about getting elected, and it's about pandering to your group. Let's have a look at Western Australia, right? Because he talked about Western Australia. This is the last thing we're doing for tonight before we head off. Thanks for being with us tonight, guys. This is the law. Australian rebels bikies convicted under flouting tattoos under strict new gang laws. This is what Luxon was talking about. 3 Perth-based outlaw motorcycle gang members have received landmark convictions under a new strict gang law after being caught showing their club tattoos while shirtless at a pool party. There's a bunch of information there, but I thought what I'd read for you is something that's sort of quite pertinent to what's going on. This is what they say. Apparently there was 7 charges, but 3 convictions, right? There were 3 convictions. Oh, this is the Western Australia Police Commissioner. That's probably Colonel Blanche, whatever. This is the first time it's been done. Other bikies have been hit with summons under the new laws, but they have opted to cop a fine instead. So remember, this is this big law that's going to change the world and make it all good again. And these bikies are kind of going, well, I'll just pay the $50 and I'll keep wearing my patch. So most of them have opted to pay a fine. I said Tuesday marked the first the legislation first courtroom test. Under the new Western Australian law targeting outlaw motorcycle gangs, an offender can be jailed for up to a year and fined $12,000 for consorting or displaying the insignia of an identified organisation in a public place. That sounds really weird, an identified organisation in a public place. Rotary better watch out. Gang tattoos and patches fall within the laws, and some members are already seen publicly growing hair or taping over tattoos. The new laws also saw the introduction of what the Western Australian government itself labelled the toughest anti-consorting regime in the country. Breaches carry a maximum penalty of 5 years in jail. Now, this is all still fairly new, but let me just show you why I think it probably won't stand up long term. There is a case going on right now, which is the first person who's being charged. What's happened is that's actually got all of the gangs to join together as one unit. So now you've got a super gang because of this law to fund this court case to then obviously hopefully overturn the law. So what you've actually done is you've turned your fractured gang culture into a united force to fight
so
this
now
thing.
there's fewer gangs.
Yeah,
there's fewer gangs now. There's just one big gang.
Mega gang. Listen to this though, right? Think about what this legislation is trying to do, right? At the time the legislation was announced, former Premier Mark McGowan said the laws would, this is what they thought they would do, would take away the ability for bikie gangs to communicate with each other. They thought that they'd be able to bring in a law. I don't want to give gangs ideas here. It says telephone. But they thought that this law would take away the ability for bikie gangs to communicate with one another. That, on top of a bunch of really overly simplistic things like that we hear people say, which is once all the gangs disappear into society and you can't identify them anymore, they actually might become more dangerous as well. So there's lots of reasons that this is ridiculous. I wouldn't be surprised if the Australian law got overturned. But Chewie, I love what you said before about importing solutions from other countries and how it may not fit with what we're doing here, especially when the experts here are saying, here's how you solve the problem. And you've got a party going, nope, we'll do it the way Western Australia does. Western Australia, renowned for their relationship with Indigenous people. So we'll just do it their way.
There's so many people out there. There's so many experts that know how to get through to these people. They're the NGOs. They're the anti-domestic violence. They're the school teachers that know the community. They all know how to do this. It's not sexy. Doesn't get votes. Not sexy. Doesn't get votes. Won't do it. Too much carrot. Not enough stick.
Yeah.
Like I urge everyone to go back through our back catalogue and have a look at that interview with Chester Burrows. He was a minister involved in the area that had a lot of gangs, and they tried to bring in that anti-gang insignia thing, and guess what? Spoiler alert, didn't fucking work.
Yeah, it didn't work.
Stupid.
And he recanted it as well. Not just didn't work, but he recanted it. I mean, I don't want
Very,
to sound
very
depressing.
clearly.
Almost on his deathbed, he recanted it because he talked to us months before he passed away.
And guess what? You ban the patches. Can't have patches anymore. Guess what? Are you going to ban a color? Are you going to ban red and blue? Because that's what they'll do. You can't. It's too broad. So they'll just lose the patches, go back to colors, and you've solved nothing.
Yeah.
And if you go any further, it's too broad. It's going to catch other people up. I would love the mongrel mob to go, all right, we're ditching the insignia. What we're going to do now is we're going to wear a shirt and tie.
I was just thinking exactly the same thing. I would love to see one of these gangs meet up in like I've got my
blazers and jodhpurs.
I've got my, what do you call these things? They've got like my Hallenstein's pants on, looking sort of semi-respectable, and my leather shoes on, and all meeting in town with their face tattoos and their thing, but all in t-shirts and shirts, and just going to every cafe and just having a meeting about their business and see how society, because that'll solve all the problems, Chewie. You know, if all the gangs just turn up in like khaki pants and t-shirts with flip-flops on, then there's going to be no problems, because that's going to stop the drug trade, and that's going to stop the violence. If they're wearing khaki pants and, you know, sports blazers, there'll be no issues from there on in, Chewie. Oh, fuck, I'd love to do that. Oh, I'd love to do that. We should totally connect with a local gang and say, guys, let's do this and film it, and then send it to Luxon and go, problem solved. I would love to do that.
John T here says, you look like my gang mate and you speak like my gang mate, but you've taped over your arm tattoo, so I can't tell that you're my gang mate. Yeah, like a lot of birds, they're very vision-based gangs. You know, yeah, over in Australia, like he uses Labour as saying, like, look at the Australian left-wing party has done this, so I'm not all terribly right-wing. The Australian Labour Party is quite a bit further right than our Labour Party.
Yeah.
Famiko remembers our interview with Chester. He described that policy as futile and ineffective.
And headline
That's damning.
Headline grabbing, I think he said.
Damning.
Yeah.
Yep, stupid, and it should be pushed back on by everybody for what it is. It is populist vote grabbing. It's not solution based. It's not outcome based. It's not about consequences. It's about votes. It's so transparent.
Hey, it's been a good show, actually. Chewy and I were a bit like, oh, what's the show going to be like tonight? I'm not really sure about tonight's show, but it's been really enjoyable. This has been much more of a free-flowing sort of a... And look, bear with us, because we do this live. Sometimes we're going to misspeak. Like, I don't think we have tonight, but I'm just thinking about the ideas that were sort of flowing off the top. And sometimes the ideas are going to flow off the top, and it's not going to be... They're not going to be good. And with thought, we're going to shape them and manipulate them and come out better. Sometimes we may speak and something might come out wrong, but we do this live. And we're thick as pig shit. So you got to remember those two things. But when we do things live, we sometimes go places we're not going to be aware of. And also sometimes it leads to really interesting places to be. And I've really enjoyed tonight's show. And I'm thank you, Chewy, for jumping in and being a part of us tonight, because I think it's been a good one.
I think I'm going to leave with one comment that I starred that I just keep coming back to, looking for a place to slot it in. So I'm going to put it right at the end here.
Cool.
Early intervention is best. Free education, free access to therapy is important to give people the best start that they can. We've spoken about it before. We've spoken about it around domestic violence. There was a huge campaign to stop domestic violence in New Zealand 20, 30, 40 years ago. Break the cycle. It's the same with gangs.
Yep.
You can't shut the door on them. You can't shut the door on their families. You can't shut the door on their kids, because it's the kids that are the new recruits, and it's the kids you need to show a way out.
Excellent. Before we head off, just to remind you again, our drop's on at the moment, bhnshop.nz. Get along there, get yourself a T-shirt, get yourself a hoodie. And I think I saw
Before
some
National bans our insignia.
Oh, shit. Are we a criminal entity? Holy crap, Chewy, don't freak me out like that.
Buy BHN merch and do crimes.
But only white-collar crime, because is that what we do? I don't know. Something like that. And thank you for all those who have purchased something so far. I'm excited by this as an opportunity for us to, have some fun with a little bit of this and that. I still think maybe something about National pulling up the ladder might be one of next month's T-shirts. But they're the T-shirts, along with probably a BHN one. And I did see some commentary in there about people saying that maybe we could do the BHN one as a bit of a permanent one, but maybe for the first run we could do an OG. Something.
I would say slogans are definitely in rotate. Like, if it's a slogan, it's one and done, one run. But if it's just the logo by itself, we can't put that in the corner. How about National? Fuck them kids. What about that?
In the week that we wrap up, which will be the week of the 20th, we'll take some suggestions of slogans. I know people are already putting back in there. I've seen a bunch of other ones coming back in. BHN, this is a good patch. Yeah,
I could design a patch.
Thanks to we've got actually, there's a cartoonist in watching us right now. In fact, I think I just put a chat up. Maybe we could have a talk about a bit more of a logo, a bit of a patch for us. And then we could get the gangs to wear our patches. Is that how it works? And then, I don't know. This is what I say when you have terrible ideas when you're broadcasting live. We've gone into one of those spaces now. Thanks to all our patrons. I know that we're pushing hard at the moment for the July merch drop, but remember, if you want to get behind what we do, it can be as little as $5 a month, then patreon.com/Big Hairy News. And that's something that, can go on forever. And I see Mr. Anderson's down there as well. This is one that people are constantly asking for. See, I like the idea of doing a T-shirt with Mumble Wank on it, Mr. Anderson, but I don't reckon anyone's going to buy it. Like, I don't. I think everyone will giggle at the idea of it, but then no one will actually buy it. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So thanks, patrons. Love you to bits. Thanks for being on board. We appreciate the fuck out of you. And I think we're done for the night, Chewy, unless there's anything else you need to get out there.
No, I think this has been a nice, quick adventure, 20 minutes in and out. I'm just feeling like I'm padding for another minute.
60 seconds away from 90 minutes, so let's get out of here.
We've had one of our highest viewer counts tonight, so obviously You guys are sharing around and introducing your friends, and we're saying things that people want to listen to. We'll clip down the best parts of the show, and you please keep sharing it around because it's working.
Or people are rage watching. Both are fine. We don't mind.
I'll take it.
All right.
And currently there are 25 likes on this live stream. Just saying,
good.
you should maybe clicky button.
All right.
Smash it.
Thanks, team. Thanks for being with us tonight. We'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition. Be safe, everybody. We'll see you then. Hooroo.